Welcome to Rockin' the Planet. I'm Shane. I'm so glad you could join me here on the show that celebrates everything that's good about New Zealand music. Now this week, we speak to John McGough, trumpeter, DJ and vocalist, about his recent trip to Europe with the New Zealand National Band. He'll give us a full update. So very proud of you, John McGough, and our New Zealand National Band. And someone else I'm very proud to have on the show is Glyn Tucker. His incredible musical journey started out in the 60s with the pop group The Gremlins. He wound up producing some of the 80s greatest hits here in New Zealand at his Mandrel Studios in Auckland. And now, before we meet my guests, let's look at our not-to-be-missed gig. It's Face TV's Entertainment Awards winner, our Best Newcomer 2016, Coral Pitcher, who is launching her debut album titled My Addictive DNA, with a concert at the Altitude Bar and Nightclub in Hamilton on the 26th of August at 8 p.m, with Brendan Thomas and Vibes playing support act. So Hamiltonians, get along there and support a great Waikato talent, the lovely Coral Pitcher. And of course, now, talking of talent, I really have some great talent. My first VIB guest tonight, I am so pleased to welcome him back here to Rockin' the Planet. His name is Mr. John McGough. What an entrance. What can you say? He's on his way. Sounds
Hello,
like the old Lone
Shane.
Ranger, mate.
How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, and you. Nice to see you
I should get some
again.
lessons off you on that trumpet sometime
Well,
soon,
you know,
but,
it's never too late.
John, good to have you back, mate. Now, since your last visit here to Rockin' the Planet, you've been overseas. We were talking about this great contest you're about to enter, a World Championship.
That's right.
Over in Europe.
Yes.
And of course you've done it, and you've got great news for us.
I have. I didn't go alone. I went with 36
You certainly did.
pals with me. Some amazing players. We went to the World Brass Band Championships with the National Band of New Zealand in Kerkrade, Holland. And we came away with a silver medal, second in the world,
that is
which was
amazing.
fantastic.
And you were competing. How many bands were competing in this
Well, there was
competition?
championship division, first, second and third, and there were 10 in the championship division and 20 or so in every other division. So the championship was all the finest of creme de la creme. That's it.
Creme de la creme. And I mean, you were competing with people like for the Yorkshire brass bands, and who are renowned to be absolutely amazing.
Yes, yeah, there was a good selection of bands from right around the world, of course, mainly from the European areas.
Yeah.
But the winning band was from Belgium, a brass band, Willebroek they were called, and we got second and England got third.
They got third?
And the other thing that was amazing was the band that got fourth from Norway were the reigning world champions there to retain their title.
So the old lips weren't quite working right that night.
Well, no, actually they certainly were. They were all so good.
Now, I know you've got to, you like to give credit. You weren't doing it on your own, of course. There were, like you say, 36, 37.
But yes,
other
percussion and brass players.
Of course, and I've noticed. I watched a clip of it, and the percussive players, the big kettle drums and all that stuff. There's some really fancy work they were doing.
They got some special mention from the judges.
Well, I must say, I thought they were outstanding.
Class,
myself. And of course, on the way out, you went to Hong Kong first.
That's
the
right.
warm-up concert.
Yes, we did played for it was the 20th anniversary of their new administration being handed back to China.
Of course.
So we did a big concert for them there in a beautiful theatre. They loved it.
Yeah, it looked good. I've looked at the concert. That was fantastic. Yeah. I saw it. And they also had a Maori dance.
Yeah, they loved them.
Cultural experience going on.
Aotearoa Mai Tawhiti, they were called.
So they were on as well.
And they were a selection of Maori cultural group, once again, from all over New Zealand.
So amazing what we're all doing out there. You know, last week we had Molly G. Page on.
Yes.
She just come back from America,
yes.
USA, and she had a bunch of medals. You wouldn't believe, bronze, silver, golds.
I know.
And
Fantastic.
now you're back. Now, what sort of trophy did you come back with? Is there a cup or?
We got a medal. I don't have it, unfortunately. It's in the offices of the brass band
one medal.
office. Yes, in Christchurch. Yeah. It's like the America's Cup, Shane. They've got alarms round it and all for people to come and have a look at it. No, they haven't.
No, I'd love to see it. I'd love to have seen it. I wish you could have brought it in, but
no, they got that, and they got a reasonable amount of money from it as well, which certainly went towards helping us to get over there.
To do the gig, and of course you had lot of supporters, a lot of sponsors.
Yes, we did.
Who do help, and
Yes.
I guess, and to sustain a band like this, it's got to be pretty difficult. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of mouths to feed.
Yes.
Over the year, I know a lot of people do it voluntarily and so on, but to be the head concho, the conductor, and the arranger and everything, how do you get a gig like that? I mean, do they get paid, or I'm just curious?
Yeah,
myself.
no. Well, every one of us auditioned to be there, so it was the top players in the country that made themselves available.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with the conductor. They all audition and are selected. One of the big things is not only that they can put a band together really well, but the selection of music that they choose to be able to go and do that over there. You know,
they select the program and everything.
Yeah.
If you get the job. This job, though, entails, is it just, have you got to be a New Zealander to be the conductor?
No, there has been musical directors from out of New Zealand that's taken the band. I personally like it that it's a Kiwi taking the
and
band.
you've currently
it's the
got
New Zealand
a Kiwi guy.
National Band. Yeah, it's Nigel Weeks, who's
yes.
Actually Welsh but's lived here for many years, and he lives out of Nelson, and he's the musical director.
And he's always been involved in this type of music,
That's
or this
right,
type of orchestra.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's so interesting to me, and I just wondered. So he's a full-time employee of the National Band of New Zealand.
No, it is a paid role, but he also he's actually head of music, I think, at Nayland College in Nelson.
In Nelson,
yeah.
okay,
So he's doing wonderful things down there with the Nelson City Brass, and he's also doing choirs and orchestral things and that down there as well.
We're going to take a look at the orchestra who you just performed, and this, I believe, it's in Holland.
That's right.
You can tell me where it is because it's a beautiful scene.
Yes, I think
an
it was called
amphitheatre.
Valkenburg. But when you go on these tours, Shane, you really can't remember where you've been.
We used to write it on the mirror, so when I woke up in the morning, I remember where I was yesterday.
That's right.
Before I left.
But yes, I think it was called Valkenburg, and it was a beautiful outside theatre, and
It looked absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
And I know the folks out there, you're going to agree with me, but here they are, the National Band of New Zealand competing at this stage, I think, for their silver medal in the World Championships in Holland. National Band of New Zealand, and actually they were performing in Holland there, and I don't know the name of that piece. It's a curious piece. It's got a real thing going on.
It's neat, isn't it? It's called Satchmo.
Satchmo.
And the soloist there's a good friend of mine. He's the principal cornet of the National Band of New Zealand, John Lewis.
Played it beautifully.
And he's the current New Zealand champion, and he's based out of Dunedin.
And I could see you just down on the left of the picture
yes,
there.
us fellas over the back, we
You
like
have
to
a little
enjoy
natter and
ourselves,
then-
don't we?
Yeah.
We stand in
Actually,
awe listening to him play, you see.
You
and we
know,
just...
I've never played the trumpet in my life. I've blown my own trumpet a lot. But can I have a go? Would you
Definitely,
mind?
yes. You could do that little trumpet call.
No, I'm left-handed, which makes it really awkward, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you hold it with your left hand. Hold it this with your left hand.
In here?
Yeah, that's,
my finger in
that's
there?
good enough, yeah.
Okay.
And then you've got to blow raspberries, right? Like that. Oh my. That's a high. You're a high note specialist.
I can't step.
Shane.
I better start
That's
slow.
fantastic.
Blow, all right.
And if you keep that up for 2 hours,
I won't be doing
you're right.
any more of the show. Hey, it's magnificent. There's quite an art to that, isn't there?
There is a little, yes.
I mean, obviously, that was a beginner, very beginner. Well, I've always wanted to. No, I don't want to blow one again. I can feel my. What's happened here? These things, the glands were going to blast.
There's
out
a
my
lot
neck.
of pressure there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and it came from there.
That's
the
right.
solar plexus.
All from the diaphragm.
I have a totally different respect for trumpet players now.
Thank you, Shane.
That's an amazing instrument you play. Now, you're out and about and gadding about, back on your own, doing your own show, John McGough.
Yes, back doing my own thing.
Singer, entertainer, and everything else that you are, and DJ. Now, you're working in Thames, I believe, tomorrow night.
Yes, Thames coming up. Thames Working Men's Club.
Yeah.
We're quite a busy calendar ahead, actually. We've got Taramanui coming up, Birkenhead, Warkworth. I'm doing some judging coming up with the band championships in Gisborne. We got the Waikato Bay of Plenty Brass Band Championships, and then the next weekend we've got the Auckland ones. I'm judging at both of those.
So it's amazing.
So
You're certainly getting about. It's all go. Isn't it a good vibe? Isn't it a good feel?
Yeah.
I noticed it myself. I looked at your gig guide and I thought, wow, it's all over the place. It's worse than me. Actually, I'm following you around on a few of the gigs.
We are a bit, aren't we? Yes, and you'll see the same posters up at the same clubs.
There's John. He's up there. He's coming. He'll be here soon.
I always give you a plug for the next night when you're on your Saturday too, Shane.
I'm a big fan, John, and I think you're doing a fantastic job. It's not easy to get out there and solo, and you're on your own.
That's right.
And you use tracks and a lot of stuff, but you've also got a DJ gig going.
Yes.
And apparently everyone loves your DJing.
Yeah, well, it's all about getting on the dance floor and having a party. So that's what I like. Same as your job, Shane.
Lift their spirits.
That's right.
And we're here to have fun. And John, just keep having fun, man. It's so good that you've called in to see me.
Oh, pleasure.
Rockin' the Planet's always going to be here, waiting for you to come back with more news. And look after that band. They are fantastic. And give our best regards to them all and congratulate them on our behalf.
And thank you for the support that you've given the band before we went as well. We really appreciated it.
How did the cookbook sell, by the way?
It went very, very well. Yes, we had a celebrity cookbook, which Shane put a little recipe in for us.
It was very good.
It sold very well. So
Thai curry. All right, John.
Thanks very much, Shane.
And happy travels, and just keep working solid.
Good to see you,
mate.
Thank
Keep
you.
on rocking. Welcome back to Rockin' the Planet. It's a real pleasure to welcome Glyn Tucker. You are
How you doing,
famous.
Famous in my own lunchtime.
I know you're so famous. It's great to have you here, mate.
Great.
And there's so much to talk about, and we've only got a few minutes. So we need a 2-hour show to fit it all in, so I won't waste time. I'm going to get right to your musical career. You've had huge success as a producer.
Yep.
You had huge success as a pop group, the Gremlins, of course.
Yep.
Loved by and admired by many fans during the 60s, I'd say the mid-60s.
Yeah, it was.
And before that, you were in a band called the Embers and so on. And your career goes right back to about 1960. So I'm going to start there.
Yep.
You're already into music. You come from a musical family.
Yeah, mostly through my mum. My mum was a classical piano player, not professional, but she played a lot of Chopin. So those Chopin nocturnes, as I got older, kind of haunt me, and I love them.
Yeah, they are beautiful.
They're great. But and she got me playing piano and then violin. So I was playing violin in the school orchestra.
So there was no guitar around at the time. And
nobody knew much about teaching the guitar, particularly electric.
Yeah.
But rock and roll hit. See, I'm older than I look. And
so this is the mid-50s?
This is about 55, 56. Yeah. So I go from playing third violin in the school orchestra to I hear... Well, in fact, I heard Little Richard, Good Golly Miss Molly or something, and
that was the moment.
And Elvis and Chuck Berry, and in particular Buddy Holly, with That'll Be the Day. Now That'll Be the Day, that was it.
That was
the violin was gone, and I bought myself an acoustic guitar which had, strings about half an inch high above the frets and
bleeding fingers.
Yeah, and I bought a book and I learned 3 chords, and then I started to learn more about music than I learned in classical, because in classical all I learned was how to read dots and push the notes or play the notes.
Yes.
But what I learned about rock and roll was 3 chords. Everything's based on chords.
Yeah.
I never learned that.
And you had no idea, because you don't play chords on violins well. People can play chords on them, but
well, of course,
not many.
The music is still based on chords,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I know.
but
It's all
we
single
never
notation.
learned that way. We just learned, here's the notes, play them, son. Exactly.
Yeah. So guitar took you by storm, and of course you're an Elvis freak and everything else. The hair went back, the Brill cream came out.
Oh, yeah, we tried a bit of that.
And the bootlace tie, and you're off.
Yep.
And a career in music. Now, I know for a fact you actually bought a record out around about 1960. That would be your first 45?
Yeah, it was, as a lot of people did during all of the 60s, right through much later, a record company would dish you out a whole pile of records that hadn't been released yet.
Yeah.
And you'd
cover them.
You know, scout through them and see what did you like or what would be good. And I'd played with Gary DeVerne in the Embers.
Yeah, who's had a great career as well in music.
And Gary ended up with his own record label, Viscount. So by 1966, we hooked up again because we'd both left the Embers and gone our own ways. And he was busy getting his orchestral stuff together. And
but this first record, I'm going to go back to that before you go. You jumped about 6 years there.
I know.
Yeah, 1960, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So this is your first record, and I'm not going to ask you how old you were, but it's a pretty early start in the rock and roll days, and a pretty good effort. Oh, Carol, I mean, Chuck Berry's song.
Well, we chose this Chuck Berry song.
Yeah, it was a great song.
And it happened to be Carol, which of course the Rolling Stones covered several years later. So we kind of got a jump on the Rolling Stones, but I'm not saying that our version of it.
Zodiac Records.
Yeah, this was through another band that I went off and did my first professional gig, and I got paid £1 a night to sing some rock and roll. Yeah,
that's why you're so wealthy. You started it.
That £1, yeah. Yeah, that was
so anyway, and that did, obviously, I mean, I don't know whether it did well. I wasn't even in New Zealand at that time.
No, it was solid lead in about 2 weeks.
But they just weren't ready for it. And so you moved on. Of course, you played at the Embers, and you're playing nightclub circuit, and you honed your craft there, doing that sort of thing. Yeah,
well, you do anything, you know, just
as we all do.
Yeah, exactly.
But then the Gremlins came about.
Yeah, well, my family was from Wellington, so when the family moved to Auckland, 58. And I was at school, went to Auckland Grammar. We lived in Howick, and I hooked up with some guys who became, several years later, the core of the Gremlins. There was Paddy McInerney, who was the lead guitar player. He and I started together. I knew a few chords, and he didn't know much, but I taught him what I knew, and he was a natural, and he just took off. And he was playing, and he was into the gear. Because of course we couldn't buy guitars.
Buy good gear, no.
we couldn't buy Fenders and stuff.
A Fender, you couldn't buy any Fender amps, no Fender guitars.
No.
And Jansen came along.
Well, that was the reason. Jansen had local production, and they made a pretty good job of what they did.
They did.
But it did preclude us from importing guitars, particularly anything that looked like a Fender, because the Jansen guitars looked like Fenders. You get a few Gibsons, and I remember Paddy bought he came along to practice one day with a Les Paul, because he was a butcher apprentice, so he was earning money really early.
Yeah, he was earning.
And I was still at school.
Bigger than that £1, eh? That's right. So how much would a Les Paul have cost then? It would have been.
I know exactly what it cost him.
Yeah,
£158.
Geez, that would have a lot of money though.
That same guitar, if he could sell it today, I think it's about 30 grand or maybe more.
Wow.
But that was the beginning, and he introduced me to a young drummer who was Roger Wiles, who became the Gremlins drummer. But the three of us started a little band, and we played at the Bible class and stuff. So that was where we did all kinds of things, trying to sound like Buddy Holly or Elvis Presley. Because Paddy was really into Scotty Moore stuff.
Yeah, and well, that you couldn't get a better sort of idol or mentor, someone you wanted a copy. Well, that would be the man.
Exactly.
I mean, the Hank Marvins and all those early guys. that was the man he was the only guy that was out there, Scotty Moore.
I couldn't really quite get into it at the time, but Paddy was really into the song Mystery Train, which was on an EP. And he was playing that, which I now love. I love that rockabilly stuff, and I can play it.
And a lot of the older musicians, I think, are going back to it. Even myself, we love doing the Blue Moons of Kentucky and rock, That's All Right, Mama.
Well, Paddy nailed those licks, and that's where we kind of started. And but he was also a huge Les Paul fan. He used to be copying Les Paul licks, and that's where the Gremlins got started. And but we sort of got started, and then I went off on my own and left them. It was probably because I scored this gig over Christmas, which eventually led to that record, Carol.
Oh, I see, okay.
But I grabbed Paddy in to a band of, it was a band called the Stereotones, led by a guy called Ian Lowe, who was quite infamous.
Yes.
But Ian was about 35 years of age and I was 17, and I thought he was a real old man. You know,
well,
I actually now don't think that.
You realise now he wasn't too long in the tooth.
So he kind of introduced me to Eldred, and somehow got us to come up with this record, that we made this record. It was pretty, what's the word, basic as far as recording techniques are concerned. But
I love the vocal on it. You've got a real raw vocal on it, you know.
Look, we'd rehearsed it so many times.
And a bit of a belter.
I was stuffed by the time.
Yeah, you had a real belting version. And for me, that, because you've always had a nice singing voice, like me, you know, and I don't imagine you to have such a, and it was the primal scream of youth coming out.
That's what it was.
That's the only way I can put it.
That is what it was,
like,
because I wasn't happy with it, because we had one mic for the vocal and one mic for the band, if I remember right.
Right?
That was all it was.
Wow.
And
just an overhead mic on the band.
Yeah, and I really did have to scream, or try to scream,
to be heard,
to kind of hear myself, and no headphones. No,
just what was coming out of the speakers.
It was so basic. So that was my first introduction to a recording studio. Yeah. But I really loved the whole thing, and many years later I always remembered those sessions that we did, and particularly with the Gremlins, where we got very sophisticated, where we could put all the band track down on one track and then do the vocals afterwards.
And dub things on and cut the tape.
I've got some great stories about cutting tapes.
I mean, that's a lovely story. And the Gremlins, of course, you became famous and around about 1966. I believe you got into the gold disc, the nominees for the gold disc. You were up there and you were top of the charts with The Coming Generation.
That's right. Do you want to hear it?
I do, actually, The Coming Generation. I know it.
The future in our hands. Where the coming generation better give consideration. Where the coming generation, we hold the future in our hands. Yeah, that's the right one.
Psychedelic. Oh, amazing.
We got to number 2. We didn't get to number 1, we got to number 2.
But number 2, was it?
Number 1 was the Beatles.
That was right, the Beatles.
The Beatles were number 1 with Yellow Submarine.
Yes.
And guess who number 3 was? The Beatles with Eleanor Rigby, the other side of it.
In the sandwich there.
Yeah, it was a Beatles sandwich.
But what an amazing place to be at that time, you know, number 2 in the charts, right in there between the Beatles. And the band went from strength to strength then, and you toured with a lot of, Come On came along in '67, but there was a little bit of a problem. National Service
That's right.
tapped you on the shoulder, your country needs you.
That's exactly. It was a balloted system, as you probably remember.
I remember.
And they said, son, you won the ballot. It's like winning lottery.
Yeah, you never win lotto, but you win that.
Exactly. But that was actually the year before. That was 1965.
Yeah.
So, but we were just getting the Gremlins together and starting to make a bit of progress when I got balloted into the army for 3 months national training. So Paddy, who's a year younger than me, decided, wouldn't it be a bummer if this happened again next year?
Yeah.
So he volunteered because he used to go pig hunting a bit, and he was.
Did you manage to stay together?
Not
in the army?
Not in the same unit, no.
Okay.
But we got in the same intake.
Okay.
So I think our bass player Ben Grubb also was thinking
I
about.
remember Ben Grubb.
Yeah. Well, Ben was thinking about doing the same thing, but he never did. But that got it out of the way, but it really did upset our progress.
Yeah,
the whole band actually
momentum
was on hold. But after that, when we came out of the army, is when Gary DeVerne hooked up with us. Because
Gary became your manager?
Well, recording manager, because he was running Viscount Records.
Yeah.
And he, later on it became Zodiac, Viscount Zodiac, I can't remember. Eventually he went off to England. He got the Coming Generation released over there on Mercury, actually. It didn't do anything, but it was quite fun to have a...
Well, when I was doing some research, I did see an acetate of the Coming Generation on a New York acetate.
Oh, really?
Acetate in New York, yeah.
Wow.
No, you probably don't. I thought, I must ask you. I mean,
I don't know anything
there's an
about
acetate out there with your band on it, printed in New York, as they used to on the machines, you know, to cut those acetates.
Yeah.
And it's The Coming Generation by you guys.
Amazing.
By the Gremlins, there you go.
Now, here's an interesting thing about the Coming Generation is that because I'm a songwriter, people expect that I wrote that song, but I didn't write that one.
No,
even that. But here's the irony: there were 4 people wrote that. One of them was Tucker.
Tucker. It was Tucker.
So that's why people think it was me.
Yeah.
But it was actually an American band called the Knickerbockers.
Yeah. So I remember it well, only because I was in the Pleasers at the time.
Right.
And Elder Stebbing used to come up with all these songs. He'd say, have you listened to this one? Have you listened to that one?
Yeah.
And the Knickerbockers, he always seemed to have one by the Knickerbockers in his collection. So he wanted to cover the Knickerbockers songs. So obviously you came up trumps with it.
Well, I'd never heard of the Knickerbockers until we heard the Coming Generation, and I think...
See, everybody, you've heard of the Knickerbockers now.
Yeah. I think it was Gary
50
that
years
actually
too late.
suggested. Gary, I think, suggested that we should do it, and because I had a kind of a Bird's 12-string guitar thing.
That's
in
right.
It, and
Now there's a story there, isn't there?
Well, yeah, Paddy had to go and borrow a 12-string guitar from Sydney,
Lewis,
Sydney.
Sydney,
it was.
Thank you, Sydney.
And it was a Jansen Invader 12-string.
Oh, yeah, brand new then. 90s.
Yeah,
we got one as well, yeah. Chance Invader, white Fender-looking body.
Yeah, and I think Wally Scott from the Invaders played one like that a lot.
Yeah, we had one on the Pleasers as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
Right.
They gave us it just to promote their 12. And it's that time for our clip of the week, and we're looking back at 1966 with Maria Dallas and Tumbling Down.
Got a troubled mind and I'm feeling sad. I've lost the only love that I ever had. Since he's gone and left this time, my love came tumbling down. Oh yes, a tumbling down, tumbling, tumbling down, tumbling down. My love came tumbling down.
Well, that's our show this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel. So until then, out there, keep on rocking.